Welcome, welcome, welcome to the day four, um, session for the York Compass Reset Challenge. And I am so thrilled to see you all here today. I, I'm looking at the main screen, so this is why I say it's probably better to join me on Zoom because you'll see me looking at you. It's really hard for me to look down here and up here at the same time. And I really want to make sure you get the best experience possible. So it's so good to see you all today. Again, thank you for your time, for the effort that you make to work through the workbooks, watch through the videos, and for putting up with my technical issues. It's not that you're guinea pigs, it's that I've never done so much on my own in one short space of time. And, life just gets in the way sometimes. So I could do with a week to get it all organised for a week. So there we are, lessons learned. And I just wanted to thank you all for coming in, for joining me, for being brave, for finding that courage. It's a really huge part of who we are when we step outside of our comfort zone and say, actually, what's going on in my life now is not for me, and I need to find a more powerful way to facilitate how I live and how I become me in this process of life that isn't terribly happy, um, or settled, or any number of the other things that you are experiencing. So I just wanted to congratulate you for that because it's big stuff. It's really big stuff. And I can remember in the early days when I turned up at all the challenges and all the this and all the that, and I felt so overwhelmed by it all. But each time I did one, I took a step up. Each time I did one, I found a part of who I was that had been squashed in the corner into that little box. And it really helped me with my sense of direction to where I am now. And I was saying this morning at the networking that I was at that I never expected to be in this place. I never expected to be coaching people through the emotional issues that we have. I never expected to be training people and showing them how much better a journey they could have in their lives by having more tools in their lives. I never expected to be a public speaker. I couldn't have told you any of those things were going to happen when I was 42 years old and felt like I was falling apart at the seams when actually I was in deep grief. And here I am in the early part of my 60s, and I really have climbed a mountain. But I'm so proud of that mountain. I'm so proud that I never stopped doing it because I have regained so much of who I am. And that's what this values journey for you has been all about, showing you how you can find that part of who you are and nurture it and love it and bring it to life in such a powerful way. Because when we orientate ourselves through change, we have to understand what it is that's holding us back now. And that's what you did in day one. This is what you did when we looked at these two charts, when we were looking at our emotional ladder. So you were looking at this ladder, the very basic ladder, but this one was the emotional feelings, the reality, our selected reality, how we interpreted that reality, the assumptions we made and the conclusions we came to, the beliefs that carried us and held us in that place, and the actions that we need to take to make change. And this is big stuff. And you really did start climbing a mountain when you looked at those things. Then we looked more deeply at this emotional ladder. We looked at how we need a balance between all of these negative, dispassionate painful places and all of these joyous, healthy growth places where we needed to bring ourselves into that neutral place. And this helped you to see where you are on this ladder, but also where you wanted to be. Being able to visualize that is such a huge, huge part of who we are. Once you visualize it, it makes it so much easier to say, actually, I want that. I want to be in that place of happiness and gratitude. I want to be in that place of inspired and confident, rather than I want to spend the rest of my life in sadness, in despair and dispowerment. Because actually, you don't just owe yourself that. You owe the people that are missing from your life through no fault of their own. Because the day they come knocking on your door, when you're in this place of happiness and gratitude, love and joy, confidence, they are going to feel so safe being welcomed back into your arms. And this has been my firm belief ever since I started this journey, that one day my granddaughters will come knocking on my door, and I am going to stay in this place at the top so that I can be there to help them constructively deal with all of the mixed emotions that they're going to be feeling when they reconnect with me. Because, of course, then there's going to be all of that sense of loss. And I don't want them to turn that around on their mother the way she was encouraged to turn that around on me. And this is the biggest part of our journey, is the responsibility that we take for supporting and loving those that are coming back to us. Because if we can't do it healthily, then we might as well not want that relationship. Because that relationship is paramount. That's why we're doing this stuff. That's why I do this work every day. And it's why I coach my clients through this work every day. Then when we were looking at day 2, we were looking at our values and how they become pressured, how they can support or how they constrain us. And this was the chart that I shared with you that really helps you to see the difference, helps you to see fear and lack and intolerance against reliable commitment, priorities, definition, honesty, trust, all of these things. And I hope that you found this really, really useful. I would love to know your feedback on this, because I thought this was a really wonderful little graph. And had I seen this a few years ago, I'd have been in my element, because it really is it's very clear. And that to me is how you sort out the stuff that's going on in your head. If you've got something that gives you that clarity, you can create more clarity for yourself. And then, of course, we looked at the personal values and how, when you look at your own personal values, what your main core values are, and how it is fed by all of these different values. And again, I'd be intrigued to see what you created for your personal values around your core. You know, this is big work. And I hope that I've given it to you in a really gentle way, because that was my intention. And then, of course, we looked at the wants and the needs, why clarity disappears underneath the emotional load. And that, again, is such a huge part of what happens in our lives. So we looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, how we start to neglect things when we are not in a healthy emotional place, and actually how we need to reinforce that to be healthier along these different parts of the needs that we have and the wants that we have. And they're very important. We need a balance. We can't have one without the other, but we can have more of one. You know, we must have water. We must have human connection, because otherwise, you know, the buck stops with us and there's no more babies. There's no more future humans. We must have food to nourish us. We must look at our physical safety, keeping ourselves warm and dry, keeping ourselves well and healthy, emotionally, financially, all of these things that are so vital in our lives. Because if we don't have those well structured, then we don't live so well. And again, it goes on to belonging, self-esteem, and the realization of who we are, where we are in society, how we fit. So this hierarchy of needs is incredibly important. And then when we finish looking at that, we actually looked at how we structure the wants and needs. Is it a basic need? Yes, it is. So we do need to buy it. Is it something we just want? Mm, we can save it for another day. And we can apply the logic of this graph actually to so many things in our lives. It's such a simple process, but that simple process allows us to really look after ourselves in a much more positive way without the pressure of the external world telling us how we need to do things, how we should do things. And then, of course, we look at how we value ourselves, how our inner values show up in our world. And that's what today is all about. It's all about our self-valuation, how our values guide us in the choices we make in this world. And that's a massive thing because being emotionally stuck, as so many of us have been, isn't a healthy response. It's not a healthy place because it's protective. It's like a sticking plaster on a wound. Eventually, it's got to be pulled off. It isn't a personal failing. It's just that we don't have the emotional wherewithal to carry us into that safe place. And because we can't carry ourselves into that safe place, it's actually incredibly hard for us to focus and move forward. And so we stay in that place of stuckness, which can, I used to say it was a bit like being stuck in the primordial soup and, not really being able to step forward because every time I did, something would pull me back. Oh, excuse me, let's just grab a drink of water. So our emotional health is a foundation. It's not an option. It's something that we need. But of course, if we've started our lives without being emotionally healthy, then we don't know the difference. There are so many things I didn't know as a young mum, as a young wife, as a teenager, a child at home. I didn't know so many things that I know now. And as I've grown older and as I've learned more and I've grown wiser, I can really see the places where I was lacking in my childhood, in the decisions I made, in the choice of partner, in the decisions I made in not standing up for myself, in the decisions I made in favour of my child by keeping myself in a place of emotional pain and distress. It didn't serve anybody. And we've all done this because we didn't know any different. And this is why your values work is so, so important. Because when you start to value yourself, when you start to put price on who you are in a healthy way, then things change. When you value yourself enough to invest in getting your manicure done, you feel better. When you invest in yourself to have your hair done, you feel like $1 million when you're coming out of that boutique hairdresser, wherever you are. You feel like the whole world is looking at you and celebrating who you are. It might not last very long. Last time I had a haircut, I stepped straight out into the rain. That was good fun. But, you know, it's that quick pick-me-up that we get from those small investments. And part of this journey is about looking at whether you want to take those investments further and actually work on the internal investment and grow that part of yourself into a much stronger, more profound place. Because that stronger, more profound place absolutely brings you back to life in a really powerful way. And I can quite safely say, hand on heart, when I started becoming a voice in the world of alienation and estrangement in 2014, I had absolutely no idea of how far I had to come to get to where I am now. But I'm glad I did it because I have my voice. I no longer dissolve into piles of tears, and I am stronger and more rounded than I've ever been. And I've dealt with some big things over the last few years that had I been that person I was in 2014, I may not have coped with so well. So emotional health is foundational, not an option. When we seek structure and support, it's an act of responsibility towards ourselves, an act of self-respect. And that's powerful stuff because we are taking charge of our own lives when we do that. And who doesn't want to be in charge of their own life? I felt for so many years in the marriage that I wasn't in charge of my life and I was literally hanging on for grim death. Now I speak up for myself and I make the choices I want to do in life. I didn't ask my partner if I could go and do the training that I did for grief recovery all those years ago. I told him I was going to do it. When it came to my masters for hypnotherapy and NLP and all of the other tools that I learned, I told him I was going to do it because I found the courage within myself to stand up for myself and make my place in the world. And when you do that, everything becomes more sustainable. And it allows that place of safety and direction to come together. And you no longer feel like you're weaving the path. Instead, you're walking in a straight line. And that's just such a beautiful, beautiful place to be. I never thought it could be, and I never thought I was that far away from it until I started doing the work. And that was quite eye-opening, to say the least. You know, when we talk about this journey that we've had, how many things have you done along the way? You've reinforced this journey because you're learning to orientate. It isn't about fixing you because nobody can fix you except yourself. I'm the guide. I'm the teacher. I'm the mentor. I'm not a doctor or a nurse. And when you have emotional clarity returning through the structure and the attention that you place on the change, there isn't any force. It comes easily. That's actually a really powerful thing as well. Because when things come to you with ease, isn't it so much gentler and kinder on how you receive and how you use it to move forward? And the thing about this journey, whether you're a man or a woman, is that we all have these emotions that become jumbled with the experience we're going through. And this isn't a light experience. You know, many people over the years have used the phrase that it's like being at war. And it really is, you know, when you're fighting to be in someone's life or you feel defeated and you step back, it is like being at war. And nobody deserves to live in that place. But so many of us do because we don't know how to lift ourselves up out of it. that's why I set this values challenge up, because I wanted you to see that there is a way to change things, but it's looking within. It's seeing who you are in this process and being able to embrace who you are really honestly. And I hope that you've been able to do that with the workbooks as they are now. Today's will be a little lighter. It's more about bringing things together. But the masterclass is the final joy that's really going to give you some more clarity. So I do hope that you can make that on Sunday. It's midday UK time, and there will be a recording for those of you that might have to get up jolly early, because I don't expect you to, unless you really want to. It would be so good to see you if you were able to. And of course, now I really want to share with you the gifts. I have a small program that I like to share with people to get them started on their journeys. So for the person who achieves the most workbooks, the most lives, the most comments on the threads, and obviously if you can't do all the lives, then the videos, but at least do them, and turns up on Sunday, the person who's achieved the most of those things will win this wonderful compass path. Path. Start again. Because it's time for you to rise and transform with clarity, confidence, and focus. Powerful change. It's a short, powerful program that will step you into values-led coaching with emotional regulation and allow you to find your identity. It's structured, but it's not rigid. And it's designed for people like you who are navigating all these changes in life. And that is the thing that I will explore further with you in the masterclass. I also have the runner-up gift, Finding Your Bearings, which is a half-day workshop. Again, that's the person who has done the most underneath the person who's the winner. It's a bit obvious, but you know. So it's about exploring values, slightly deeper than we have now, identity and direction, when life is feeling uncertain. And then, of course, everything folds into itself. Everything moves into the next stage and the next stage. So all of these programs that I've created over the last few years fit neatly into each other. It's like taking steps up a ladder. Do the one, orientate yourself, settle yourself, be sure of where you are, retrench and be ready, so that when you're ready to take that next step, you can do it confidently and with clarity, and know that the journey you're taking is going to be so much more fulfilling. It's, what do I say? It's a place to grow and be yourself, blossom and come to life. It was only 2 or 3 years ago when I suddenly realized how much of me had been put into a box, how much of me had never really come out, and how much of me was actually frightened to come out. As I started to find my voice and I started to find my way, I suddenly found I was leaving that cloak of anxiety and distress and all of those other emotions behind. And I really did feel like a flower blooming through the soil and out the other side. And it's no coincidence that I started growing my oak trees again. When I was first married, my ex-husband's grandfather used to grow bonsai trees. You know, those beautifully crafted Japanese trees in their little trays with their beautiful canopies trimmed to be a smaller but real version of the big thing. And he started me off with a conker. And I was very curious because he had so many different natural trees. So I followed the journey. And then for many years, I actually had quite a collection of my own bonsai, all indigenous to the UK, all indigenous to the area I lived in, Oxfordshire. And it was an absolute joy nurturing them and loving them and looking after them. But as life became more and more distressing, it showed in how I nurtured those trees. Because when we moved house, not through choice, suddenly found all my trees died. And I found myself looking at the skeletons of what had been the most beautiful, living creatures. And I know they don't run around with four legs, you know, and lots of fur and a waggy tail, but I was loving them and nurturing them. So they were dependent on me being well and healthy. And then it dawned on me as I was thinking about that, how did that play with my daughter? Because she would have seen that. I wasn't aware because I was so busy keeping my head down and keeping everything together and trying to be the best mum I could possibly be. I couldn't actually see that I was failing her with those things in exactly the same way as I'd failed those trees. And so for me, this journey of the coaching and the training and the growth started to show itself again in my beautiful, healthy trees. And I started growing my oak trees again in 2020 through lockdown. And I have 5 beautiful, healthy trees. They will need a good tidy up, but they're all growing. And last year, I planted 36 acorns, and I have 36 acorns germinating, ready to all start growing. I have no idea where I'm going to put them all, but it shows me just how far I've come in my own self-care, that I now have this energy again to nurture these beautiful trees. And it's the energy that I want to sustain to be able to nurture my daughter when she comes back and to nurture my grandchildren, to not have a repeat journey with their mother. And this is what our values are all about. It's how we take that time to really check in with who we are. And that goes back to that lovely graph I showed you where you have the positives and the negatives so that you can see which side you are with all of these values. Because the more you entrench how you want your values to be, the more powerful you are as a human being. And again, it's why I set this journey up for you all, because I want you to know that things can be different. I want you to know that no matter how many times people blame you, it is not you in its entirety. A percentage of it is you, because we have to be responsible for who we are. If we're not responsible for who we are, we can't make change. We can't be the people we want to be, and we can't be in the lives of the people we want to be without taking responsibility for ourselves. And it's, you often feel that you're a bit long in the tooth for change, but actually none of us are. None of us are long in the tooth for change, because when we could stand outside and watch the birds deciding how they're going to eat, how they're going to find water, how they're going to take food back to their young. They're always in change. They're always looking for how they can do it better because they are so reliant on the weather. If it's against them, they can't do any of those things. So they have to keep constantly making decisions. They have to keep constantly re-evaluating their situation, the wants, the needs, and work out which things in that split second are going to be right for them. Well, we have the beauty of being indoors out of the weather, and we have the beauty of considering those more deeply. And I'd really love you to go back over this work and just refresh yourself before you do the work for today so that you are really all together in one place with your thoughts, the emotions that go with them, those feelings that we all get when we know we're going in the right direction. And I really want to know how your hearts receive this work, because that's such an important part of our journey. Everything we do that nurtures our heart keeps us well. Everything we do that nurtures our mind keeps our body in a healthier place. And again, that was a massive thing I learned. I shared that with you in the first video. The journey of blue lighting and nearly dying, and not truly understanding that the deep emotional, stressful, painful place I'd been in for so long was actually having a physical impact on my body. And how years later, when I did that first lot of grief coaching, my body started to heal. Not with the pills that the GP was so desperate to give me, not with the sticking plasters that I'd been putting in place for all of those years, but actually with the understanding of who I was and what I was carrying and what didn't belong to me. And this is the thing about our values. They allow us to see those things. And that's when we can change how we move forward. It's how we can make the decisions to let go of the things that aren't ours and hand them back to those people that they came from, where they came from, who they came from, and to receive in that space we've made the things we deserve in our lives. And I don't know how much more there is for me to say, except that I have absolutely loved having you on this journey. And I'm going to let you go now so that I can get this workbook out to you and get the video out to you. And we can take the next step ready for Sunday. So please do give it a go to have the winner gift of the Compass Reset Plus and the runner-up gift, Finding Your Bearings. And I can also talk to you then about the compass path itself and share more with you about what that entails. So I'm going to thank you for today, for taking the time to spend with me, and for hearing all the things I've had to share with you. And to tell you how proud I am of you all for investing in this time in yourself to really learn who you are and how you really want to be. So thank you, and I wish you well. I'll see you on Sunday.